All right, back on the conversation. I've been looking forward to Alan Weisselberg being indicted for a long time, at least 5 years. I've said repeatedly on this show when no one else was talking about it, Weisselberg straight ahead. That if Trump was going to have any trouble, it would be because of his chief financial officer in the Trump organization, the guy who keeps the books. Donald Trump is what is colloquially known as a moron and couldn't possibly do all the bookkeeping for himself. Hence, he must run his illegal activities through the person who keeps the books, and that's Alan Weisselberg, and he has finally been indicted. But are these charges the real deal? So that's the conversation. We're going to bring on Ryan Barber here. He's justice correspondent for Insider. He's written about this. Ryan, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
No problem. So, we've talked a decent amount over the last couple of days on the Young Turks about how serious these charges are. I'm going to actually start with a funny quote that's in your piece from Trump's lawyer. He said, "It's crazy that that's all they had." First, that seems like a hilarious admission that there's a lot more, that the prosecutors just didn't get it. Am I hearing that wrong? A person who's innocent wouldn't have their lawyer go out, "That's all you had"?
Well, I think there are a lot of different ways to read that statement. I think he was using it more in the colloquial of, hey, this is they're going to try to write this off as really a minor type of. They're really going to try to write this alleged misconduct as, hey, businesses all over the country provide their employees benefits. It's common for certain executives to get cars and whatnot. So I think that is actually how I read his comment. I think the way you did is very interesting. But I think that's where he was coming from here. But in a lot of the conversations I had in really since this indictment dropped and really showed us what the prosecutors have, a lot of tax lawyers have, on the defense side, who even some who've been on the prosecutorial side have said that they believe the New York DA's office really has done what they needed to do to prove to show that this went beyond those kind of corporate perks that we see a lot in the corporate community, that this was, not just cars, but it was also, rentals and even a kid's tuition. There was also language in the indictment about cash and gifts and things like that. And one of the things that I personally found most amusing about the indictment was how closely the Trump organization tracked all this. There were a few mentions within the indictment of how the Trump organization maintained internal spreadsheets showing how Alan Weisselberg's official compensation was lowered in light of some of what the district attorney's office is now calling this essentially unofficial compensation that's at the root of this indictment. How one went up while the other went down, the two accounting for one another. That's one of the things that my eyes really kind of lit up about reading the indictment.
That's really interesting. I had not seen that. So let me explain for folks at home. That's Donald Trump's cheapness coming back to bite him. Because he's like, hey, if I'm gonna give you a condo, I want to lower your salary because of it. And then when they keep track of it, you just kept track of illegal activity. And I also want to clarify for the folks at home, the problem isn't giving a perk to an employee. The problem is not paying taxes on it, especially when it's massive perks that equal millions of dollars worth of the replacement of salary, as they just showed you in the spreadsheet, right?
And that's exactly right. I mean, what the prosecutors alleged is that Alan Weisselberg received what totaled $1.7 million in this type of essentially off the books compensation that he did not pay taxes on over a stretch of many years. And I think it's important to note here that Alan Weisselberg is charged alongside the Trump organization, but at yesterday's court hearing, really a remarkable proceeding, the New York District Attorney's Office said that this was not one rogue employee, that there is plenty of room, it seems, based on everything we've been hearing from the New York District Attorney's Office, the New York State AG's office that's been conducting this investigation in concert with the Manhattan District Attorney. There's plenty of reason to believe that this investigation is ongoing and could in fact still reach the former president Donald Trump. There was talk in the indictment about Trump having signed some of the checks that we're talking about here. So this is far from the end of the far from the end here.
Ryan, I hear you on all that, but let's get to the heart of it, because look, Trump was elated when these charges were announced, according to people that are close to him, and I believe that account. And that's a curious thing to do when your organization has been indicted, and it goes to the same point as the lawyer, which is like, I can't believe this is all they got when we've been doing a mountain of illegal activities. So which leads to the obvious question of what's the strategy here? Because if the prosecutors are starting with this as an appetizer, but leading to the bigger cases where they say, hey, listen, you cheated on your taxes entirely by lowering your the asset prices, values, the value of your assets, as Michael Cohen charged in open testimony, and inflating their value to get loans to the banks. That's a bigger level of criminality, let alone the Stormy Daniels hush money, which he's clearly guilty of, let alone money laundering, and that's a whole nother thing, et cetera. So if this is an appetizer and they're gonna try to do dominoes, great, right? If you think Donald Trump did it. But if this is all they have, then I can see why the Trump team's kind of excited by it, because it is the lower of all the charges that are possible. So any sense of whether it's the appetizer or the entree?
So there's a lot of play here. I mean, what you often see in criminal prosecutions is the defense doing what they've done here, which is to undercut the prosecution's case. Say, you're charging that as a crime, you have to be kidding me, this isn't criminal conduct, or your evidence doesn't support it. I think it's really a dangerous game for Trump to be playing, to come off as so elated over how these charges resulted, because here's what's happening. They've indicted the Trump organization, they've indicted Alan Weisselberg. This is widely seen as part of an effort to pressure Alan Weisselberg, who's been elbows deep in the Trump business for years, to flip on his longtime boss. So I wonder, given that Alan Weisselberg now has this added pressure, has the feel of the handcuffs around his wrists, as Michael Cohen put it, I almost have to wonder how Alan Weisselberg is feeling about Trump being so elated about this, because this is somebody you've worked with for decades. There are reports that they have a close working relationship, maybe not more than that, but I was a little astonished. I was a little surprised to hear the elation, because if you're Alan Weisselberg, you have to be kind of scratching your head saying, hey, I've worked for years with this guy and he's coming off as elated about these charges. I'm probably not so elated if I'm being charged with tax fraud.
Yeah, but I mean, look, if you worked with Trump all that time and you didn't know he was an ass, that's on you, brother, right?
And that's coming to play here. I mean, a lot of people are wondering, will Alan Weisselberg flip or not? And there are two schools. There are a couple schools of thought of, hey, nobody wants to go to prison. At the end of the day here, a lot of the estimates put his potential prison time at about, I think I've seen about 2.5 dozen years at the top end. So there are a lot of people who kind of come at it from that point, which is you don't spend decades in the Trump organization working with Trump, allegedly doing his dirty business, only to have at the end of your career, I believe he's in his I believe he's in his 70s.
Yeah.
Your kind of come to Jesus moment, as they say, where you fess up to all your sins. So yeah, we're all having to do a little armchair psychology here, but that is I think a force that is proven to be challenging for the prosecutors, where he is at least as of now loyal. We can't call it loyal to the end, but loyal so far.
Yeah, so we don't know if he's going to flip, and we don't know if the prosecutors are going to bring heavier charges later, right? And this is the Manhattan DA's office, but the New York State Attorney General can bring additional charges or different charges because they've been working on the case together. So those are all real possibilities. They charge the Trump organization. Companies, obviously, the Supreme Court is full of crap. They're not actually people, so they can't go to prison. So a normal layperson would normally ask, why bother criminally charging an organization?
Yeah, so as you said, you can't throw a company in jail. But what you can do in bringing an indictment alone is really cast a cloud over a business. So even before you get to the question of a conviction or not, this indictment poses real, potential risks for the ongoing operations of the Trump organization. We do not have a lot of detail on the finances and the loans of the Trump organization. Trump has gone to great lengths to make that so and to shroud his financial records in secrecy, but there has been good reporting on it. And what we do know, just from a general understanding of how banks work and how loans work, it's commonplace for loan terms to allow banks to essentially call on loans in the event of something like this, which is an indictment, and that puts real, just incredible strain in real time on a company. It also dries up any kind of loan funding you need for the ongoing operations of your business. And then there are countless other types of just business relationships that happen in the normal course of a company's operations that are jeopardized by this. There's no customary business wants to be dealing with an indicted company. And that's especially true in the banking and the financial sector, where they have some serious regulation to deal with, serious regulators. The regulators don't want them to be dealing with indicted corporations being accused of years and years of tax fraud.
Right. So Ryan, there's a really interesting and important fact in there. So look, I've seen folks write about how the Trump organization's reputation might be ruined. What reputation? Okay, and if you're still giving loans to Donald Trump, you're so unintelligent that that no one can help you. You might as well burn your money. The guy has bragged for decades about how he never pays anyone back, and he thinks that's smart business. So that's why I'm like, why did Deutsche Bank give him those loans? It makes no sense at all. He's never paid anyone. He's brags about he never pays anyone back, and they're stupid for giving him the money. He says it publicly. So to me, the real deal is, why did Deutsche Bank do those loans? That to me that's the real deal. Okay, and we'll see if we ever get to it. This is a snail's pace, but I know we're out of time. But I want the audience to understand the super important thing that Ryan said. If a company is indicted, it could be in their contracts that you could call the loans. If they call the loans on Trump, it's an epic disaster for him. He doesn't have the money to pay him back, and then he will not be so elated. So that will be an interesting thing to watch for here as this case goes forward. Ryan, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.